Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk. Again, John, Dave, and myself are going to look back over Leinster's victory at the weekend. Also look at Munster's victory against Connacht, and of course preview our game against Munster on the weekend too, from the Aviva. So, boys, 28-10 against Ulster. We made 15 changes to the starting team, but as though we didn't skip a beat, just continued on. 23 victories in a row.
Yeah, it's kind of phenomenal, isn't it? To be able to make 15 changes and just fairly well hammer a team that are, well, hammer is probably the wrong word, but to comprehensively beat a team that were fairly strong. Like, okay, they weren't 100%, but they were, I think you said 85%, Jason. They were.
I actually, before we started, I just had a look. They had 8 players who started in both games. And then they had 9 other guys who started one game and were on the bench for the other game. So, you know, like they had fairly sizable amount of their 23 were common to both games. So they just kind of mixed and matched fellas in from one game to the other, but pretty much the same 23 for both games, with a few exceptions.
So some of the exceptions, some of the younger players are guys that'll be, you know, that Leinster or Ulster are hoping will be, you know, stalwarts over the next decade. Guys like Tom O'Toole, Eric O'Sullivan. Those are guys Ulster have a lot of.
Your man Bill Johnson was one of the guys.
Yeah.
That only was on the bench for one game.
Yeah, a lot of the younger players that either started or came on are guys that they really have a big hopes of that they'll be part of the Ulster team for a decade or more.
Like, so, I think that's the difference between the two sides, is that we played 35 players. So the coaches are quite willing to trust a B team. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's kind of a very large squad, whereas Ulster pretty much stuck to their core. Like, if you say there was 17 players that played either both games or featured start and a bench in their squad. So like that's not really giving the whole squad a rotation. Whereas Leinster certainly, like they used 35 players and changed the start to 15, the entire starting 15.
And also there was word that the Leinster team that may or may not start this week were kind of playing together last week in advance of the Ulster game. Like, they were actually training for this week's match.
Yeah.
So, you know, to be able to do that, it's kind of, you know, it's like to say they have this culture thing where it doesn't matter if you're playing for. I heard a guy interviewed there recently, one of the academy manager and under-20s manager, who was saying that it doesn't matter if you're playing Ulster, under 18s, under 16s, under 20s, Ace team, B team, C team, whatever the hell you're playing, you're representing Leinster, and you're not letting the standards down. And even if you're a top guy and you're playing in an A game, there's no way you're giving your phoning it in. You're just not. That's not part of the ethos. Like, you just can't do that, and it kind of shows, you know. And to be able to do that is just great. You know, it just shows. Okay, it's not going to last forever. There's something's going to happen eventually that's going to push them out of this zone that they're in at the moment. But while they're in it, let's enjoy it, you know. Yeah, we thought we were in a golden generation 10 years ago. It looks like we're in a platinum generation now, you know.
There's an element of that it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling kind of a self-replicating kind of machine more than anything, because one of the reasons why the B team are so good is that they get to practice against the A team every week. One of the reasons why the A team is so good, because they get to practice with the B team every week. There used to be kind of a joke in hurling that the toughest game Kilkenny had every year was the final practice match before the All-Ireland final team was named, because they had such a strong panel. And there's an element of that to Leinster as well, that the depth of the panel is so great. I mean, okay, there's guys in the Leinster squad who are internationals and stalwarts for Ireland and stalwarts for Leinster, but the guys who are backing them up, you know, it's kind of a flip of a coin who's the better player or who's the more likely to start, because they've just reached that level of quality. I mean, there's no difference between Porter and Furlong. James Ryan has come along. Ryan Baird is pushing him along, and then there's the plethora of guys in the back row, guys in the center, like the horde of O'Briens that have developed. Frawley, who's been exceptional in this period. So it's an interesting problem for Lancaster and Cullen, but I'm sure it's one that they appreciate.
I have to say though, when I saw the two teams being selected, I thought we could lose here. I was concerned, but like while we were good, I thought Ulster were terrible. They made
the first half they were fairly
God, they made so many mistakes. Like, I don't know. I'm just thinking back to like experienced internationals like Madigan. You know, there was an up and under put to him, and he just stood there, and it went between his arms, knocked it on. There was I think Cooney flung a pass at Jordy Murphy, and he knocked it on when they were kind of 10 meters outside our line. Just these fundamental errors, and like it was interesting to see McFarland at the end. He said, "Well, something's going wrong because we're training at a high intensity. We're not making errors when we're doing it in matches, when we're doing it in training, but we just can't seem to transfer that onto the match day." And like that could be a concern for them. They've obviously got to go. We'll come to their semi-final against Edinburgh, but like it could be a concern for them, because they're certainly not clicking. But in saying that, like if Cooney had got that try, if it hadn't have been disallowed,
it was marginal too, very marginal.
No, what it was very marginal. I mean, like, I thought he was offside myself, but like I've seen those given, and
if he had an extra pair of socks on, he would have been onside,
Yeah, and like if that had been given, it would have brought them back to, I think, was it 4 points? But
yeah, maybe even closer. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, because I think we scored a try just shortly after that, didn't we?
Yeah, almost immediately afterwards.
Yeah. So like there was a big swing.
Ulster, for whatever reason, out of all four provinces, haven't managed their comeback well. Connacht have looked good. Obviously, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the game against Munster. But Connacht looked good against Ulster. Munster and Leinster we've seen. So for whatever reason, and as you say, Jay, they're doing things that in a million years those guys would never do. Jordy Murphy dropping balls, Ian Madigan dropping balls. John Cooney, his form seems to have fallen off a cliff.
In fairness, Ian Madigan's been in the wilderness for the past year.
Oh yeah, but these are good rugby players. They are good rugby players. It's not like they're rubbish. They're good rugby players, but they're just not playing well collectively or individually at this point in time. And they're the one province that hasn't clicked since it came back. I'd say, funnily enough, I'd say Kieran Marmion is hopping that he wasn't picked against Munster, because he played very, very well against Ulster. John Cooney played very poorly against Connacht, and then had obviously a poor enough game, along with many others, indeed, it has to be said, against Leinster. And Marmion, I'd say, might have appreciated that another opportunity to press his claims for the autumn internationals, or the winter internationals, whatever they're going to be called, whenever they happen. So, but for whatever reason, Ulster individually and collectively just haven't clicked on their comeback from the lockdown. So they're going to have to click pretty bloody quickly.
Yeah, well, just you say clicking, like I thought Frawley just had another great game. Like I don't know how many matches he's played for us. Maybe say 20 matches so far in his career. I've rarely seen him put a. What's that?
He had a couple of shaky ones early on. He was intercepted and charged down and stuff. But I agree.
But like I think he's turning into a great player. Like the makings of a great player, I should say.
We have a question on Twitter, Jay, about Frawley. It's from Brian Hughes, and he asks, should Frawley consider becoming a 15/12 instead of a 10, given the way the game is going, and also considering Byrne, Ella being solely 10s? He's tall, could put on a few kg if needed, can kick, pass, and read a game. A real future prospect.
Definitely.
Yeah, and depending on which the fashion is, like there was a fashion which I know you didn't really like, Dave, of the 10 and 12 being kind of distributors.
No, I do like that. I do like that.
And then there's another tradition, or what would I say? A type of game that's played like Saracens play it with Alex Good coming in at 15, coming into the line and being a distributor or being a first receiver or whatever.
That's the one I don't like.
Yeah. Well, maybe I mix them up. So there's two positions that you can play in that you can be, that you can distribute from, or that your distribution can be, a big asset in. And I think Frawley, that's the three positions Frawley plays: 10, 12, 15. He's also a very big lad, which will suit 12. When Madigan was playing 12, he's not the hugest guy in the world. So he was definitely in that second playmaker mode, where someone like Frawley, he's 6'3" and, not exactly skinny. So he could, and he's only quite young, so he could also, like you say, put on a bit of beef. The one thing I would say is, though, look at what happened to Robbie Henshaw against England when he switched back to 15 after a long absence. What they said about him was that he too much bulk on him to cover the ground at 15, because you have to cover so much ground, that he was maybe too bulked up.
He was against one of the best.
Oh, absolutely.
Number 10s who was pinging it all around
in a position he hadn't played in years.
Absolutely.
I was just saying to Dave actually before we started, I wouldn't discount, I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm talking about in a number of years' time.
Mm-hmm.
Moving Henshaw back to fullback and then moving Frawley into 12, so that you're getting all your best players on the pitch, and Henshaw, if you think Henshaw, this has got to really put pressure under Henshaw, that there's a kid coming through who's going to challenge him for that 12 jersey. He probably hasn't had his position questioned since he arrived, and probably since he started playing rugby. There probably hasn't been putting him under severe pressure at 12.
I thought it was. I think what you're saying is right, and I think it was interesting that against Munster, anyway, his game seemed to have evolved a little bit. He was using little kicks and stuff, which he has in his locker. We've seen him do it in the past, more. But no, I always think a team should have a second 5'8" somewhere in its quiver, whether it's on the pitch or somewhere in the squad. You should always have that guy, because it enables you to play a different kind of rugby. So if you have that guy, and he's also, as you say, John, 6'3" and a big guy, so he can play a more orthodox inside centre role, then that guy becomes gold dust. So
yeah. But when was the last time you saw a really big fullback? Chris Latham. I'm sure you can think of other examples, but it's not.
Saturday.
Your man from Northampton, remember the guy that was the son, Malander's son? He was a big lad.
Yeah, he's fairly big, actually.
That guy was playing fullback for Ulster at the weekend, was pretty big.
That's true. See, I knew you'd pull up a few that would make me look. But generally, it's not a position for big guys, which 12 increasingly is. So what you're saying about the second 5'8" thing, look at what England do with George Ford and Farrell. That's exactly what they do. And the two distributors on the park, they can do all kinds of fancy shit. But they don't do it for the whole game. They do it to change up the game, which, it's a great, like you just said, it's a great thing to have in your quiver, to be able to move guys around to have either a distributor of 15, a distributor of 12. Obviously, you're always going to have a distributor of 10. And even if you have a guy who can play all three positions, not necessarily you're going to start him in all three positions, but that even during play, you can change around. He can move to fullback, or he can move to, just on certain strike plays or certain defensive plays, or, you have all these options. And let's face it, options are what create, havoc in the minds of your opposition. If you've been setting up one way for a whole game and all of a sudden you're setting up a different way, you confuse the shit out of your opposition, which is half of what the game is about. Yeah,
no, having that kind of flexibility, that tactical flexibility, that positional flexibility, either on the pitch or on the bench, is massive. Especially if you see teams now following that trend. I don't know how long it'll last of a 6-2 split.
Yeah, that's another thing it's an asset for. Have we lost Jason?
No, no,
he's
I'm
still
here.
there.
No, sorry.
I did drop for a minute. But I'm back.
Pretty as a picture.
Once again, the two Byrne brothers, especially particularly Harry when he came on, seemed to impress. Like he's really grabbing whenever he gets those 20-minute cameos. When he comes on, I think he just looks a class player.
He doesn't look flash either, does he? Like he's full of confidence. He really is, which is great to see in your 10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Boys, do you think
Harry Byrne
think
could be
Arnie did enough?
Go on, Jake.
Sorry.
No, just Harry Byrne I think will be the next solid incumbent in the Leinster 10 jersey.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Rob Kearney, do you think he has done enough, or did he do enough?
Not much to do, to be honest.
Yeah, I wouldn't be jumping up and down about him, but then again, he's 34 and it's his first game of the season, so he has that knack of pulling out big games when he needs them. So that and all the stuff he has in the locker over the years might get him selected, but I don't think his showing in that particular game is going to get him selected. But like I said, he's always got a big game in there when he needs it, which hopefully might be against Saracens or somebody in the semi-final.
As you say, there's still a bit of road to go. I mean, there's obviously the match of the weekend, but if we win that, there's a final. There's a quarter-final against Saracens. So there's still a few games that they could rotate him in if necessary. Like Larmour's not going to play every game every week, so they're going to have to rotate in. So, boys, we turn our attention to the Munster game. It was one of the most bizarre matches I think I've seen for a while. Connacht looked like they might have caused a bit of an upset potential, but then the two lads getting the red cards, and then kind of gave a glimmer of hope just coming up to half time when Munster got 2 yellows. Bundy crept in. Thought they might have been able to mount a challenge, but alas, to no avail.
They were always up against it, and you notice that 3 tries, just as soon as they hit back to 15 players, bang, 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 3 tries, game over. That's always going to happen when you've got 13 players for a long period of the game. You might get away with 13 players for 10 minutes, but you won't get away with it for whatever it was, the full half.
Probably 50 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So, what did you think of the cards? I thought the first one, it was one of those Islander tackles. Depending on what angle you looked at it from, it was red, yellow penalty. I thought red was pretty harsh.
Yeah, but I'd agree with you, but they're really clamping down on those type of penalties. So,
I personally didn't think it was a red, but I can see why it was a red, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I suppose.
The second one definitely was a red.
Stone bunker.
Yeah, well, point of the elbow into your neck is not a good look. Replayed, it never gets any better looking.
And I was surprised that both Friend and Quinn Rue kind of were very, fair enough. We got our rewards there. We definitely had we definitely should have been 2 reds for their attitude, which I thought was quite pleasant to see from a coach.
Yeah, it's not nice when they whinge, all right. It's not nice when they do the Richard Cockrell on it, is it?
I mean, is there anything Connacht can do anyway? I mean, there was nothing they could say anyway. I mean, it was their last game of the season. So it's just a pity because I'd look forward to seeing your man Papi Lee. He looked good, like.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
he did, didn't he?
Just
Bundy Aki at number 8 looked fairly demonic as well. It has to be said. That man's a nutcase.
He's a nutter. Wouldn't you love to have him? When you love to have played with someone like him, like he just gives 100% every time he goes on the jersey.
I love Bundy Aki. I really do.
Like, he just sort of, even that season that they won the league, that whole story. I'm sure it had a few wings on it, but when they went into to retrieve was it Henshaw's laptop?
Henshaw's laptop, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you just go, that's a rallying cry. That's just absolutely brilliant too.
He's the kind of guy you love when he's not playing you.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think of Frank Murphy? Like, I suppose he's on a bit of a hiding to nothing, you know. He can only referee what is in front of him, but 28 cards, 28 penalties makes the game quite stop-start, doesn't it?
It does, but I mean, if the team, I mean, he played the cards he was dealt, if you like, literally and metaphorically. I don't think he had a whole lot of choice. I mean, you couldn't argue with, for example, any of the cards, red or yellow. I think they were all, they were all justified. And it's very hard. I mean, when people say, "Oh, he gave away a lot of penalties," and then you go back and you look individually at each penalty, and you kind of go, "Well, yeah, that is a penalty. Oh, that is a penalty." And
Yeah, but like rugby has moved from a sport to an entertainment business. Like we have to realize that it's been
and they have changed
professional.
the laws.
But it's for fine. But it's 25 years professional, and it hasn't really grown. Like it sort of it took off, and then it's sort of plateaued. And maybe it's plateauing because there's an awful lot of like, unless you're really a fanatic about it, you couldn't have said that, oh, I'll sit down and watch that match at the weekend. Like if you're a GA head or a soccer head, and just with a mild passing interest in rugby, if you were sitting down watching that match, you'd say, Jesus, like it's just so stop, start, another penalty. I don't understand what that penalty is for. And it's just another penalty, or the green team's attacking, and then all of a sudden they're penalised and it's a penalty to the red team. Like,
That,
you know, if you want to referee it to the letter of the law, far away, there's probably twice as many penalties knocking around there if they really want to delve in and see. But I do think that they need to be a little bit more sympathetic to as a product they're trying to sell.
Yeah,
Well,
no, it is a fair point. Part of the problem is, I mean, you were talking about the soccer guys and the GA guys watching the game. And I don't mean this to be denigrating to any football or soccer, but it's the difference between chess and drafts. Rugby is a very, very complex game with a complex set of laws.
Yeah.
If they want, I mean, attempts have been made in the past to simplify the game. And we have rugby league and we have sevens. So it's very, very difficult to strike the balance between keeping that which is rugby union and at the same time simplifying the laws to make it a more attractive spectacle. Very, very difficult thing to do. All you can do is perhaps keep the laws, but the ones that govern or guarantee progressive play, you make the penalties for contravening those laws much more severe.
Maybe, yeah. Like, but I mean, before it went professional, they used to say about rugby, it was a great game to play, but a terrible game to watch. But when it was an amateur game, there were so few people watching it.
It didn't
really matter. Like, you know, there was very few substantially large crowds at games. You know, you would get a few for big AIL games in Limerick, obviously internationals, but you could probably count them on two hands. Many crowds were crowds of, say, greater than 5 figures in Ireland, or probably actually not many AIL matches would have got more than 4 figures. But, you know, like we've kind of moved on now, and we're scrambling to get money from TV stations and from companies for sponsorship. It has to be attractive for people to watch and people to say, I want to watch something that flows end to end. You know, I like what rugby is. I like the gladiatorial aspect of it, but I want it to flow a little bit more than it does, instead of it just staccato. And they played 10 minutes of extra of added on time, or that's not really injury time, but 10 minutes. Like, so that second half was 50 minutes long, or 49 minutes long. First half, sorry. You know,
it probably was even longer if you added in all the time for where the clock was stopped in real time. It probably took an hour. Yeah. No, I agree with you, but the question is, how do you do it? And I
don't know. I don't know how you do it.
The only way you do it is for me, in my thinking, the only way to do it is to make the penalties for contravening those laws, which are there to protect the flow of the game, much more harsh. Whether that's in terms of, you know, sin binnings, or increasing the value of penalties for those offences, or I don't know, for those specific offences, not overall. It's something they have to look at. But then the idea that if you increase the value of penalties, it means that people will be less inclined to kick for goal or kick for will be less inclined to do something that involves playing on rather than the kick for goal. And you don't want games to be like they used to be again in the amateur days, where you'd have a game that was 18-12 and it was all kicks.
No.
It is a tricky one. The only thing is there is no only thing. It's just difficult.
Yeah. Anyway, boys. Say go on, John.
Funny that you mentioned the game going professional 25 years ago. I've been trying to look it up here, but it's 25 years ago, either this week or this month. It's very, very soon anyway. Which also means, because it was done on the 100th anniversary of Rugby League turning professional, so it means that Rugby League is professional or in existence for 125 years this month. And it's interesting to see the way that they've dealt with exactly what you're talking about in making a spectacle for the game. Rugby League changed a lot of laws in the very beginning to try and make more running rugby, but they've ended up with a more one-dimensional product in some ways. Whereas Rugby Union preserved all its scrums and lineouts, and which is diversity itself. The fact that you have so many different set pieces gives you more diversity, rather than just two lines of guys running at each other. So yeah, just thought I'd throw that in, seeing as it's this week or this month.
Neither Peter Stringer nor Devon Toner will be able to play Rugby League.
Exactly.
No. You just have a whole load of flankers playing, really, don't you?
Yeah, or centres or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
I think with flankers, Jason was going for a bit of the old Cockney rhyming slang.
He was going for the fact that they're the two players that got dropped originally from the whole scenario to create Rugby League.
Yeah, and then they all became clones of each other. They're either centres or flankers. Yeah. Well, okay, so we're gonna take on Munster on Friday night. We finished our regular season on 69 points. We had 15 wins from 15 and 9 try bonuses in those 15 games. So it's pretty impressive. Do you think, though, that this game might be a little bit of more significance to Munster than us? Not saying we're not going to compete and try to win it. Of course we are. But considering...
I hope we do a lot more than try to win it.
Yeah, but they've lost their last 2 semi-finals against us in the Pro 14, last 2 seasons, 3rd season now. They haven't won in Dublin since 2014. And since the match in Croke Park, and including that match in Croke Park, we've played 27 times against them, and we've won 20 times, which is 3/4 of the fixtures. They have a lot of motivation.
Get them past the semi. Sorry, old joke. 2 seasons ago joke there, sorry.
The question is, your original question, Jay, was, do I think Munster will want it more, or will be up for it more?
No, I don't mean that. I just mean
they need it more.
They need it more.
Oh, they certainly do need it more. But I don't know whether they'll be able to express that on the pitch, because part of what makes Leinster a team as good as it is that the players have this unquenchable thirst for glory, or not for glory, just for winning. It doesn't matter about glory. Glory is for everyone else. They just need to win. I'm not sure that enough Munster players are in that position yet.
Yeah, I was just looking at their press release there the other day. Obviously, they have their 2 long-term injuries. Carberry and RG are both out, but they've kind of said that they're waiting on the fitness of John Klein.
2K looking like they're going to be out, all right, yeah. Are they even vocal? Definitely out.
They were saying that, well, I don't know what way. They're probably trying to keep Leinster guessing. They just said they're waiting on the fitnesses of. And then your man Delante came off injured as well.
Yeah, I'd say he's all right. He's a tough lad.
He's all right, I think. But they finished the game with 14 players because they'd used all their replacements.
Yeah, I think they took him off more as a precaution.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But point is, though, that they played, okay, they were fucking miles ahead, but they still, took him off with a few minutes to go and played with 14 men. So I have to laugh at what Van Graan said and getting his excuses in early. He mentioned 5-day turnaround. Like, he wouldn't be in that situation if he had have not finished on 51 points, won more than 10 games out of their 15, and like he kept all his star players on the pitch for 60, 65 minutes. So like they were playing against
Another
Connacht.
10-minute rest.
Connacht were down to 13 men with 50 minutes to play. Like the minute that those two lads got the red card, ideally he should have taken off Conor Murray's, all of the stars, arrested them, Conway, Earls, etc., and let them sort of be rested for that match on Friday night. Like, he really only has himself to blame.
Yeah, I mean, it was no secret that Connacht were going to change their entire team because, Friend said he was going to do it. So I don't think that Munster going full gun or, with 4 or 5 bullets in the chamber was necessary compared to what Connacht were putting out. But I suppose, I don't know. It's hard to know with Van Graan. I'm not overly convinced by him yet.
Definitely not. Like, I mean, and you think, like, if they lose this game, that's another disastrous season for them.
Season over.
Hmm?
It's season over.
Season over, but like not for the first time in the last few seasons that they've come up against a good side. They've been beaten, whether it's semi-final against us in the Pro 14 or a match against Saracens in a quarter-final or a semi-final.
Every team needs that one match where they come up against somebody who's favourite to beat them, that they win, whether through adversity or whatever, but they win it, and that pushes the team on to the next level. Munster have had opportunities at that game, at that match in the past, and they haven't been able to take it. I don't think they've been in the position. In fairness, I don't think they've been in the point in their development where they're ready to take it. I'm not sure that they're in that position right now, but we'll know come the weekend. It's almost impossible to tell because when Leinster get into finals mode, they're a different team than Leinster in the Pro 14. So it's going to be interesting. It's actually a very, very difficult game to call.
It's always you always say it, Dave. It's always a lottery when you're playing Munster in a knockout game. Interpros are all bets are off kind of thing. It's obviously we're favourites, but I know I've heard you say before, Dave, that you'd rather play nearly anyone else other than Munster in a knockout game because anything can happen. We've come out the right side of it, as Jason just gave us the stats there, 27, and that includes knockouts, 27 games and 20 of them won. They've only won once in Dublin since that game in 2008, October 2008, where they beat us 13 or was it 18-0? They beat us 18-0 in October 2008. And that was just when we got all our Isas and our CJs and all those guys and Rocky. And I was feeling confident and brought a Munster fan mate to the game and thought I could have a bit of crack with him, but walked out there depressed, 18-0. And I think that since then, they beat us in 2014 in Lansdowne Road, and that was it. So hopefully we can keep that winning record. Someone was going to say earlier actually about the Ulster game and the way the guys, when we were talking about how the guys fronted up a whole new 15. It's something that was hung around their neck to follow on from my previous point about them having a culture of no matter who's in the jersey, it's got to, you got to, no matter which team you're in, no matter whatever, it's all Leinster, and you just got to bring your A game. So those guys had the weight of an unbeaten run hung around their neck, after no rugby for 6 months, and they went out and they convincingly beat Ulster. So whoever turns up this week is going to have an unbeaten record around their neck. They're going to have a Munster semi-final, a knockout game, all the things we've said hanging around their neck, and hopefully they can raise their game again. And we do have the other advantage we do have, as Van Graan said, is the 5-day turnaround. They've got to feel that to some degree. But the other side of it is we are psychologically going to be minding ourselves a little bit for Saracens, even if it's only a 1% thing. They're going to have to throw everything at us because, as we just said, it's season over if they lose. So beware the cornered beast.
It's a bit like the European back-to-backs.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a game in between, but playing the same opposition so close to one another in the same competition, it's an interesting thing. And the question is, how do those back-to-backs? Generally, Leinster do well in the second legs. Obviously, sometimes they haven't, but generally Leinster do well in those second legs. So this is the second leg. He said, basing that on absolutely nothing whatsoever.
Fingers crossed.
But you're saying about holding something back, I think from Leinster's point of view, their squad is so deep that they can, if a couple of guys, like for instance, looking at our injury list, Furlong hasn't played in the opening couple of matches. We know Ryan has had his operation. He's making good progress, but is obviously, was supposed to be, many sort of 4 months layoff, and he's probably at 2.5 months since his op now, or whatever it is. So he was warming up with the lads. Whether he's sort of pushing to start, I don't know. Likewise, Levy, he hasn't played in, 18 months or something. Again, he was involved with the warm-up, but he hasn't played. So, but you have guys, I don't know, again, saw a whisper of the team, like Will Connors is in, and Caelan Darris. So
recipient of grabbing your chance with both hands award.
Yeah.
I can see, they do say in the Monday's injury announcement, they do say that Levy, James Ryan, and Tadhg Furlong are all touch and go. That they could actually feature. You could see one, all, or none of them on the bench this weekend.
Yeah.
You have to think it'll be none, but I don't know. They seem to be making, Levy and Ryan, who I'm hearing about, seem to be making incredibly good progress. Furlong, I'm just not sure. He's a back issue, and I don't know the ins and outs of it. But the three of them are supposed to be nearing fitness. And like you say, two of them were on the pitch last week warming up. That's, that on a water carrier job is pretty much a sign you're going to get selected next week. So if not, maybe the week after. But I can see them. I can see them being warmed up for Saracens anyway.
But Saracens is another 3 weeks away. So it's.
Well, it's 2 weeks from this weekend, isn't it? We've got the semi.
3 matches to go. No.
Semi this weekend, final the following weekend, and Saracens the weekend after. So
yeah, sorry. Yeah, so
2.5 weeks.
So it's 3 match weeks before you get to it.
Yeah.
Well, whatever way you want. Yeah.
Yeah. From last Saturday to Saracens is 3 weeks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, those lads are just those guys still have to come and filter back into the side. But I just going back to my original point, I just think that this is a significant game for this. Potentially could be the make or break of Van Graan as coach there. He's had, 2.5 seasons he's been there now?
The first 1.5 are pretty disjointed, though, in fairness. And he's only really got a team together just in the very, very recently. So I don't think he's gone if he doesn't win this game.
No, I wouldn't say he's gone, but it's another season of out of Europe, didn't qualify for Europe, and losing to Leinster in another semi-final. That's I'm just saying it's a very large fear factor hanging over that entire squad. Whereas,
which could make them dangerous.
well, very dangerous because, we can't be complacent just because, it's another semi-final we've been added on to the I don't know, many other semi-finals in the last 4 or 5 years we've been in. Generally, we win them. But, like, you take anything for granted and you've got someone hiding out there in the, as they say, a snake in the long grass, that they're gunning for us.
Here's the thing. Don't win at the weekend. Don't win in 3 weeks' time or whatever. Then that 20-game unbeaten streak or 21 game doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So we can pat ourselves on the back for it all we like, but ultimately, all those games are it's basically just a cue to get into where we are now. Where we are now is what matters. Now, I'm certain that the team are aware of that, and I'm certain that point has been hammered home by the coaches. But it's, it's something for a lot of people to bear in mind that, it doesn't matter how well you walk up to the diving board if you fall off it.
Yep. It's very true. And, everything from now on in Leinster season is a knockout match.
Mm.
Everything else is played. The pool games are played. The league games are played. Everything's played. So from here, it's sudden death. So either we're going out in a semi-final and a quarter-final, or we're going further. And obviously the other side of that is we're getting a double. So let's hope that we can keep the winning streak going for another 5 games.
Yeah, well, we've a very tough schedule ahead. Just looking at the other side of the draw, Ulster obviously have to travel over to Edinburgh. Ulster's record this season was 1-8, drew 1, and 6 losses. So that's quite mediocre, And they ended up on 44 points and still managed to get into the semi-final. On the other hand, Edinburgh had 11 wins out of 15, which ended up on 51. Just I think Ulster got a little rake of try bonus, or they lost matches, they got a bonus point, and they got a few try bonus points as well. But you have to say, when Richard Cockrell took over that side, we all said,
he has work cut out.
Well, he has work cut out, but there's no better Buchel to do that. Like, and he's really come in and within a couple of seasons has kind of changed the balance of power in Scotland from Glasgow to Edinburgh.
Big time, yeah.
He's done it, and he's done it by turning Edinburgh into a really, really, because Edinburgh, to a certain extent, like Leinster, were cast as, the capital city softies. There's nothing soft about it.
Lovies, isn't that what they call them, Dave?
Huh?
Lovies.
Well, there's nothing soft about that Edinburgh team now, so there's not, either physically or mentally. And I see Cockrell's already started the mind games with Ulster.
Has he? What did he do?
Oh, he's just suggesting that Ulster are the favourites, and there's no real way that Ulster should really be winning this game.
Because it's a home game for Edinburgh, and they top the league. So
it's just typical Cockrell. Like he just throws these troll bombs out there, see what he can find, see what he can shake out of the trees. But and to a certain extent, people look at Cockrell and they think about the stuff he says, and they kind of build a picture of him and maybe of his teams as well. Maybe it's deliberate. They build a picture of him and his teams based upon these, as I say, troll bombs that he throws out. And that takes their attention away from the fact that he's actually a superb coach who coaches any team he has will have a really, really good pack and really, really good structured back play. And that's what Edinburgh have. And they've got very dangerous players as well. Ulster will have to, if Ulster play like they played against either ourselves or against Connacht, they're going to get a hiding.
Yeah, definitely.
Ulster have to be absolutely on it come Saturday. Otherwise, they're going to get a hiding. Of course, the thing that we do have to remember is Ulster kind of knew that going into this series. Ulster were in that position where they couldn't really be caught from below and they weren't going to catch up above. So the only games that really mattered to them were the Edinburgh game and the Toulouse game. So they kind of, to a certain extent, there's something we should mention, that they could kind of, not really spaff off the 2 games that they had, but they didn't have to be absolutely on it for them, because what matters is Saturday.
Well, it's not too dissimilar to what happened last season for us. Remember, we were going great guns until about March.
And the season before.
And the season before, yeah. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think we lost. I think we lost 4 and drew 1 or something like that in our last 6 games. So, we're so far ahead that ultimately, I mean, who knows? Maybe that did do for us against Saracens that time, in the final. I don't know.
Or who knows? Maybe engineering a bit of a slump was what made us peak for it, and now we're not going to. So you can read that any way you like.
Maybe so. Yeah. So I was going to say one other thing about that Ulster Edinburgh match. It was good to see that Edinburgh there was 700 people rocked up or allowed to rock up to that derby match at the weekend, and I see Twickenham is talking about having 20,000 at Baba's game against England in a few weeks' time.
It's based on Edinburgh anyway. It was based on proximity to the stadium, so I'm looking good, lads.
You're laughing, yeah.
If we ever do the Leinster,
I think a number like that England would have would be very, very precipitous at this point in time. It hasn't gone away,
No, exactly. Might be just a bit too soon, but some good news, I suppose, from Europe today was that they've come up with a format.
Brexit's over
for the new Heineken Cup for next season. So there's going to be 24 teams in it, split into 2 groups. So if we get to the final, we will be seeded 1 from the Pro 14 side. And we will play then the 4th ranked teams from Pro 14, Gallagher Premiership, and the top 14.
Is that the way it's going? 1 versus 4?
Yeah.
They made a bit of a mess of the announcement, because they originally announced that the seeding was based on points totals in the Pro 14, so that no matter what happened, Leinster would be the number 1 seeds out of the Pro 14. And then the Pro 14 said, no, that's not the way we're doing it. We're doing it this way. So everything had to be deleted and retweeted or reposted, because they obviously, one side had taken one thing out of it, and the other side had taken the other thing out of whatever agreement they'd come to. So it was like many things at this point in time. There was a certain amount of confusion, but they seem to have sorted it out.
Yeah. So it's good, and then they're going to have home and away quarterfinals, which I also thought was an interesting addition. And then the final is going to be in Marseille, which is obviously where this year's tournament should have been played.
Next May.
Just one thing, just going back to Europe. Alan Kavanagh asks, Van der Fleer or Connors for Saracens?
Ooh, what a great problem to have.
Yes.
Like, they're both phenomenal tacklers, different kind of tacklers. Connors is just great at chopping them down, so that might get him selected. Whereas Josh, they both can tackle and get back up and tackle again, and do that all game. Connors is a bit taller, maybe a better line-out option. The engine on Josh Van der Fleer, though, is, I suppose, the engine on both of them, really. There's not a huge amount to choose in terms of engine, because they're both just Duracell bunnies, which is what you need at 7. I suppose Josh might be better on the groundwork, being a little bit shorter. But I don't think it's going to be, there are other guys that can do that in the team as well. So it's a very close call. I'd say it might go on what happens if Connors is selected this week. Who's going to be selected if we win? Who is going to be selected for the final? It's a great problem to have. And then you've got Dan Levy waiting in the wings, who can play 6, 7, and even 8 at a push. So, like, the shit you can do with the 9 players we have in our back row is just
But
stupid.
are we kind of because we've got so many good players in that back row, are we kind of going to create problems for ourselves down the road, or maybe even next season? That there's all these guys. So you've got Josh Van der Fleer, who, you know, an Irish, say, regular in the Irish side, went
Ian
off to the
Combs
World Cup.
at 7. You know, I know Dan Levy's been out, but he's been.
And then you've got Dan Levy coming back, who was an Irish international. And then you have, you know, you've got, say, Connors as well.
It would be
So
an
you've
Irish
got
international if the Italy game had gone ahead.
Yeah.
So you've got these three guys all
That's
vying for the same jersey in the club. That, like, regardless of whether the IRFU get involved, the players are going to say, hang on a second, I just can't. I want to push my international stakes forward, and there's a guy here who's got 30 Ireland caps. There's another fellow who's got 5 Ireland caps, and I'm trying to just make my way. I'm out of here. I need to get game
We're
time.
losing one of them.
You haven't even mentioned. You haven't even mentioned Scott Penny, Jason, who's
but okay, there's another one, and
a player as well.
We're not talking, I'm not talking
Absolutely.
about great IRFU conspiracy here or anything like that, but just from the fact that these are approaching world-class players, or certainly international class players, who need to be playing regular rugby in order to, as you say, push their international credentials forward. And at this point in time, they can't. Some of them can't, because there's only so many places. There's only so many games.
Yeah.
So
the
whole thing. One of them could shift to number 8. Well, then you've got Doris and Deegan. One of them can switch to 6. Then you've got Doris Deegan. So you've got yourself a situation where, you know, just speaking as a fan of the players themselves and leaving aside the whole provincial thing, one of them will have to leave. I'm not saying we want them to leave. We certainly don't. But for their own careers, one of them is going to have to leave, at least.
Yeah. 100%. Like, and it's sad that, like, it's if there was, and then you see, you've also got the fact that, say, the other clubs. There's only 3 other clubs in Ireland, or provinces in Ireland, and they're not developing their own players as quickly as they possibly should. So therefore, there's gaps in their, in their roster that these lads could easily slot in. If there was someone as equally as good as Van der Fleer or Penny in the Connacht squad or the Ulster squad. Sorry?
They'd be playing for Ireland.
Well, like, there wouldn't be an opportunity for these lads to move, because there'd be someone as equally as good as them in their position in Galway or in Belfast or in Limerick. So, like, if there's someone who's not as good, it's only natural that the IRFU want to have somebody who's excellent playing rugby at a professional level, rather than tipping around playing for Lansdowne or UCD.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not even like I said before, it's not even the IRA. The player themselves, because they're top professionals, will want to be playing regular rugby, which, you know, they can't really do at Leinster. I mean, there are advantages at Leinster. If you're, say, if you're a top player, like, and I'm not talking about but if you're a top player and you've got lots of games in November and lots of games in February and March, you don't want to be playing lots of games in November. You don't want to be playing lots of games in February and March. You want to be off in the Ireland squad. You want to be in Carton House. You don't want to be, you know, playing Pro 14 rugby. And if the only games you're going to get are during those periods of time, then you're kind of going to have to leave. It's unfortunate for the players, and it's unfortunate for Leinster, but for the players' careers and for the benefit of the Irish team, where you have as wide a selection base as possible. Yeah, pas de choix.
Yeah, I saw something somewhere, or I was talking to someone, and they were saying, but then you might have a situation where you've got young players who will say, I quite like living in Dublin. It's where my family is. My friends live here. Like, even from a practical point of view, I could have bought a home here. And rather than up sticks and move, I'm happy to play 7 games for Leinster, playing in the best club in Europe, playing with some of the best players in Europe, and training in one of the best facilities in Europe. And then playing a substantial number of my games in front of 18,000 or 45,000 people. Or I can up sticks and go, let's say, to Galway, where, if they want, if Connacht are playing against Toulouse in the European Cup, they've got to get on a bus and drive to Dublin to catch a plane, whereas it's a taxi ride, if you live in Dublin. It's not a 2-hour drive. The training facilities, I presume, aren't quite as up to the same standard as the one in UCD. And obviously, sports ground, while it's a great little stadium and a good atmosphere, it's not quite up to the same level of playing in the Aviva 3 or 4 times a year in front of 50,000 people. There's probably a part of human nature saying, do you know what? I'm actually happy here, and I'm happy to be part of the best club in the world, but just take my 6 to 8 games a season instead of playing 16 or 18.
I don't know if that attitude actually survives in Leinster.
Maybe not.
Because that, and I know, I understand what you're saying, but if you think about it, the other side of that, that's, to a certain extent, a limited ambition. And at the level Leinster are at, no player has limited ambition.
Mm.
See what I'm saying? It's not meant to be.
No, I do. No. I'm just saying, like, that if you're, let's say I don't know, I'm trying to think of somebody, like to say you're a young centre coming through now, right? So you're a young centre coming through, and you look at, well, Gary Ringrose is pretty much, unless he's injured, he's probably going to start for Ireland. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other centre is Robbie Henshaw. So Robbie Henshaw is probably in the top 3 other centres in the country. So depending on form and injuries, he's probably going to be in the national squad. So it's hard to say. So if we're playing in the Heineken Cup and we're playing in the Christmas match in the Aviva, and both those lads are fit, both those guys are playing. So if you're a young centre coming through, you're thinking, right, well, I'd love to be playing instead of Gary Ringrose, but Gary Ringrose is, say, 25. He's here in front of me for at least another 5 years. Now I have to be super to get on the team ahead of him. Now you might think yourself, I'm a very good player, but Gary Ringrose is probably going to go on the lines. That means he's one of the best 8 centres or 6 centres in Europe. That's a big ask to say, I think I'm better than him. So,
and the other side of that is because you're not playing in the Heineken Cup games or the big interpros, you're not getting the opportunity to show that you're as good or better than Gary Ringrose, because at the end of the day, no matter how well you play against Treviso or Zebre or Ospreys, people are going to go, well, it was only Treviso, Zebre or Ospreys.
Yeah.
So there's the guy, when you're first starting out, you really want to be playing those games, because when the internationals are away, that's a great opportunity for you to play, right? So when you're first starting out, that's brilliant. Like you get to play in November, you get to play in January and February, and you get to play, or February, March, and you get to play those other games. So that's great. But then you reach a certain point where if you're still playing those games, you're not playing against Munster in the Aviva, or you're not playing against the big English team in the Aviva, or you're not going away to the south of France, or you're going away, but you're a water cart, a water boy. And then you look and say, okay, like in your example, well, there's Henshaw and there's Ringrose there, right? Okay, they're getting those. Where am I going to get my opportunity? And you start to look around, and that's why, certainly in the back row, because there's only one open side flanker, although there are 2 flankers. There's only one open side flanker, so there's only one spot every week. You're kind of thinking, well, if I look around, okay, Jordy Murphy's gone up to Ulster. He's gonna get. You look at Munster. You look at Connacht. There's not much massive, not massive. I mean, Connacht and Munster are good players, but they've got a South African there. So
Yeah. Do we have any?
while we're kind of about European stuff, I just want to mention a guy. Maybe a lot of people watching will know from traveling to European matches. Eric Pelly, who sadly passed away there the other day. Eric was a great Leinster fan. He was based out of London, but he was from Dublin. And yeah, he was one of the nicest, most genuine, kindest men I've ever met. If you were away, you were never on your own if Eric was around. Like you could walk into a pub in a city that you'd never been in before, in a pub you'd never been in before, in a pub full of people you'd never met before. If Eric was there, you weren't on your own, because Eric would look after you. He was that kind of, he was a kind, genuine man, and obviously his family, he'd been missed by his family. A lot of us would know his brother Connor, who goes to a lot of matches. But I'll certainly miss him going forward. I know a lot of people will, so you'll be missed, Eric.
Yeah, great guy.
Absolutely.
Great man to have a few pints as well.
Yeah, he was. Oh, he also led me astray a time or two. That has to be said.
Yeah, I think he led us all astray. God bless him.
Absolutely. God bless him. Okay, boys, as ever, thanks a million. Thanks very much for watching. And if you are following us on Facebook or Twitter, please give us a like and a thumbs up. Thanks a million, lads.